The stagecoach lurched to a stop in Independence, California, sending dust spiraling into the hot August air of 1875. And Olivia Harlow stumbled out with hands shaking so violently she could barely grip the door frame. The other passengers barely glanced at her as they dispersed into the small mountain town, too focused on their own destinations to notice the young woman, whose entire body seemed to vibrate with an invisible terror. She stood there on the dusty street, clutching a worn carpetbag to her chest, her eyes darting from building to building as though expecting something terrible to emerge from the shadows. Owen Sawyer noticed her immediately. He had been loading supplies onto his pack mule outside the general store when the stage arrived, and something about the way the woman held herself, like a deer cornered by wolves, made him pause mid-motion. He was a mountain man through and through, standing well over 6 feet tall with broad shoulders that strained against his buckskin shirt. His dark hair fell past his collar, slightly unkempt from weeks in the high country, and his arms were thick with muscle from years of trapping, hunting, and surviving in the Sierra Nevada wilderness. Most people in town gave him a wide berth, intimidated by his size and the wild look about him, but Owen had always been gentle beneath the rough exterior. He watched as Olivia took 3 steps toward the hotel before her knees buckled. Owen moved fast for a man his size, crossing the distance in long strides and catching her before she hit the ground. The moment his hands touched her arms, she gasped and flinched violently, her eyes going wide with panic. "Easy now," Owen said softly, immediately loosening his grip but keeping her steady. "You are all right. Just got the travel sickness, I reckon." Olivia stared up at him, her breath coming in short gasps. Her hands were trembling against his chest where she had instinctively pushed against him. She was pretty in a fragile way, with auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun and green eyes that held too much fear for someone so young. Owen guessed she could not be more than 22 or 23. "I am fine," she managed to whisper, though her shaking hands told a different story. "Please, I just need to find the hotel." Owen gently released her and stepped back, giving her space. "Hotel is right there, miss, but you look like you could use some water first. Store has a pump out back." She nodded quickly, still watching him with that wary expression, like he might suddenly transform into something dangerous. Owen had seen that look before on wounded animals, the kind that had been hurt so badly they no longer knew friend from foe. "Thank you," Olivia said, and hurried toward the hotel with unsteady steps, her carpetbag clutched so tightly her knuckles were white. Owen returned to his mule, but he could not shake the image of those trembling hands from his mind. He had been coming into Independence for supplies every few weeks for the past 5 years, ever since he had built his cabin deep in the mountains, and he prided himself on minding his own business. But something about the woman bothered him, tugged at a protective instinct he usually reserved for injured animals he found in his traps. That evening, Owen found himself at the saloon, nursing a whiskey and listening to the town gossip. It did not take long for news to spread in a place as small as Independence, population barely 300 souls. "New schoolteacher arrived today," the bartender mentioned to another patron. "Young woman from San Francisco. Town council hired her to replace old Mrs. Peterson, who passed last winter. Mighty brave coming all this way alone," the other man replied, "though she looked scared as a rabbit when I saw her earlier." Owen set down his glass. "The woman who came in on the stage," the bartender nodded. "Miss Harlow, I believe her name is. Staying at the hotel until they get the teacherage fixed up. Roof leaked all through spring, made a right mess of the place." Owen absorbed this information quietly. A schoolteacher. That explained the neat dress and proper manner, though it did not explain the fear. He finished his drink and headed back to his camp outside town, where he preferred to sleep under the stars rather than pay for a hotel room. But all night, he kept thinking about those trembling hands. The next morning, Owen was loading the last of his supplies when he saw Olivia emerge from the hotel. She wore a different dress, dark blue and practical, with her hair still pulled back severely. She walked with quick, nervous steps toward the small schoolhouse at the edge of town, constantly looking over her shoulder. He told himself it was none of his business. He had a long ride back to his cabin, and winter would come early to the high country. He needed to finish preparing. But instead of mounting his horse, Owen found himself walking toward the schoolhouse. The building was small and whitewashed, with a bell tower that had seen better days. Owen could hear movement inside, the sound of furniture being dragged across wooden floors. He knocked on the open door. Olivia spun around so fast she knocked over a stack of books. Her hands flew to her chest, and even from across the room, Owen could see them shaking. "Did not mean to startle you," Owen said, staying in the doorway. "Heard the teacherage needs work. I am handy with repairs." Olivia stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her trying to decide whether to accept help or send him away. Fear warred with practicality in her eyes. "The town council said they would send someone," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Town council talks a lot but moves slow," Owen replied. "I am Owen Sawyer. I live up in the mountains, but I am in town for another day or two. Could fix your roof before I head back." "Why would you do that?" The question came out sharp, suspicious. Owen considered his answer carefully. "Because you look like you need help, and I have the time. Nothing more to it than that." Olivia's hands were still trembling, he noticed. She clasped them together in front of her, trying to hide it, but the movement only made it more obvious. Something had happened to this woman, something bad enough to leave her jumping at shadows. "I do not have money to pay you," she said, "did not ask for any." She bit her lip, uncertainty written across her face. "The teacherage is behind the school. The roof is very bad. It rains inside." Owen nodded. "I will take a look." He spent the rest of that day and the next repairing Olivia's roof. She stayed inside the schoolhouse most of the time, organizing books and preparing lessons, but occasionally she would venture out to the teacherage with water or to check on his progress. Each time, Owen noticed how she kept her distance, never coming closer than 10 feet. And each time he saw those hands trembling. On the second afternoon, while Owen was hammering new shingles into place, Olivia brought out a plate of bread and cheese. "You should eat," she said, setting the plate on the porch railing and quickly stepping back. Owen climbed down from the ladder and washed his hands at the pump. "That is kind of you, Miss Harlow. It is the least I can do." She wrapped her arms around herself, even though the day was warm. "You have been very helpful." Owen sat on the porch steps, keeping space between them. He ate slowly, aware that she was watching him with that same wary expression. Up close, he could see the dark circles under her eyes, the way her shoulders stayed hunched as if expecting a blow. "You been teaching long?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. "This is my first position," Olivia replied. She was standing on the ground while he sat on the porch, which put them at roughly the same eye level. "I completed my training in San Francisco last spring, long way from home. Independence is my home now." The words came out firm, almost defiant. Owen nodded, taking another bite of bread. "It is a good town, quiet. People mostly keep to themselves but help when needed." "And you, do you prefer keeping to yourself?" "I do," Owen admitted. "Built my cabin 6 years ago after I finished working the timber camps. I trap in winter, hunt year-round, bring in hides and meat to sell. Come to town every few weeks for supplies, then head back up. That sounds lonely. Owen considered this. Peaceful, more like. Mountains do not ask questions or expect things. They just are. Olivia was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. That does sound nice. Over the next few days, a pattern emerged. Owen found excuses to stay in town longer than planned. The teacherage needed more than just a roof. The windows needed repairing, the porch steps were rotting, and the stovepipe was cracked. He worked steadily, and Olivia grew slightly more comfortable with his presence, though she still kept her distance and her hands still trembled whenever he moved too quickly or spoke too suddenly. One afternoon, while Owen was replacing the porch steps, Olivia sat in the doorway with a book, reading aloud to herself to prepare for lessons. Her voice was soft and melodic, and Owen found himself working slower just to listen. She was reading from a poetry collection, something about nature and mountains that seemed fitting given where they were. "You have a nice reading voice," Owen said during a pause. Olivia looked up, surprised. "Thank you. I hope the children will think so. School starts in 2 weeks. They will like you." Owen fit another board into place. "You care about doing it right, that matters." "How can you tell I care? The way you have been organizing that schoolhouse. I saw you arranging those books 5 different ways, making sure everything is perfect." A small smile touched Olivia's lips, the first Owen had seen. It transformed her face, making her look younger and less haunted. "I suppose I am a bit particular. Nothing wrong with that." The smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. Olivia closed her book and stood. "I should prepare dinner." "Thank you again for your work, Mr. Sawyer." "Owen, just Owen." She hesitated. "Then you should call me Olivia. Miss Harlow sounds too formal." It was a small thing, but it felt like progress. Owen nodded. "Olivia it is." That evening, Owen was sitting outside his camp when the sheriff approached. Tom Bradley was a decent man, fair and honest, one of the few people in town Owen considered a friend. "Heard you been helping the new schoolteacher," Tom said, settling onto a log across from the fire. "Roof needed fixing. That is good of you." Tom was quiet for a moment, staring into the flames. "She say anything about why she came here? San Francisco is a long way, and we are not exactly a desirable posting for a first-time teacher. She keeps to herself." "Yeah, I noticed that too." Tom shifted his weight. "Got a telegraph from San Francisco police yesterday. They are looking for information on a woman matching her description. Seems there was some trouble before she left." Owen felt his muscles tense. "What kind of trouble?" "They did not say specifically, but they asked to be notified if she was found. Said it was a delicate matter." Tom met Owen's eyes. "I am not going to respond. Woman has a right to start fresh if she wants. But I thought you should know, seeing as you've been spending time with her." "She is scared of something," Owen said quietly. "Or someone. Figured as much." Tom stood, brushing off his pants. "Keep an eye on her if you can. Something tells me she came here to get away from something bad." After Tom left, Owen sat by the fire long into the night, thinking. He had come to the mountains 6 years ago to escape his own past, though his was less dramatic than whatever haunted Olivia. He had simply grown tired of the noise and crowds of the lumber camps, tired of being around people who only saw his size and strength and wanted to use it for their own ends. In the wilderness, he had found peace and purpose. But watching Olivia struggle with her demons made him realize that sometimes running away was not enough. Sometimes you needed help to heal. The next morning, Owen finished the last repairs on the teacherage. Olivia inspected his work with careful attention, running her hands along the new porch railing and testing the steps. "It is perfect," she said, and there was genuine warmth in her voice. "I cannot thank you enough. You are welcome." Owen gathered his tools. I will be heading back to the mountains tomorrow. Need to check my trap lines before the season starts proper." Something flickered in Olivia's eyes, an expression Owen could not quite read. "Of course. You have already been so generous with your time. If you need anything else fixed, Tom Bradley at the sheriff's office can get word to me. I check in town every couple weeks." Olivia nodded, her hands clasped in front of her again. "I will remember that." Owen hesitated, then said carefully, "Olivia, I know it is not my place, but if you ever need someone to talk to or need help with anything, I am available. No questions asked." Her eyes went wide, and for a moment he thought she might cry. "Why are you being so kind to me?" "Because you look like you need kindness," Owen said simply, "and because I know what it is like to want a fresh start." Olivia looked away, blinking rapidly. "Thank you, Owen. That means more than you know." Owen left Independence the next morning, but he found himself thinking about Olivia constantly during the week-long ride to his cabin. He wondered if she was settling in all right, if her hands still trembled, if whatever she was running from had found her. The thoughts distracted him from his work, which was unusual. Owen prided himself on being focused and present in the wilderness, but now his mind kept drifting back to green eyes and auburn hair and trembling hands. 2 weeks later, when Owen returned to Independence for supplies, the first person he saw was Olivia. She was standing outside the schoolhouse with a group of children, all of them holding slates and practicing their letters. She looked more relaxed than before, though Owen noticed she still startled when a horse went by too quickly. He did not want to interrupt her teaching, so he went about his business at the general store and the trading post. But that evening, as he was preparing to make camp outside town, Olivia appeared. "Owen," she called softly. He turned, surprised to see her approaching. She was walking with more confidence than before, though her hands were still clasped tightly together. "Olivia, how are you settling in?" "Well, thank you. The children are wonderful and the town has been welcoming." She paused, seeming to gather her courage. "I was wondering if you might join me for dinner at the hotel restaurant, as a thank you for all your help." Owen was taken aback. This was the first time Olivia had initiated any interaction, and dinner in public was a significant step. "I would like that." They walked to the hotel together, keeping a respectful distance between them. Owen was acutely aware of the curious glances from townspeople, but Olivia seemed determined to ignore them. Inside the small restaurant, they took a table by the window. "How are the trap lines?" Olivia asked after they had ordered. "Good. Found evidence of a healthy beaver population up north. Should be a profitable winter. Do you ever get lonely up there by yourself?" Owen considered the question. "Sometimes, but I have found that being alone is different from being lonely. The mountains keep me company in their own way." Olivia played with her napkin, folding and refolding it. "I understand that. Sometimes being around people can be lonelier than being alone. Sounds like you are speaking from experience." She looked up sharply, and Owen saw fear flash in her eyes. But then she seemed to make a decision, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I was engaged in San Francisco," Olivia said quietly, "to a man named Richard Thornton. He was from a wealthy family, very respectable. Everyone thought I was lucky to have his attention." Owen stayed silent, sensing she needed to tell this at her own pace. At first he was charming, attentive. But after we were engaged, he changed. He became controlling, jealous. He did not like me speaking to other men, did not want me to work or have my own interests, and then he became violent. Olivia's hands were shaking badly now, and Owen had to resist the urge to reach across the table and steady them. Instead, he just listened. He would grab my wrists, shake me, push me against walls, always careful not to leave marks where people could see. He said I made him do it, that I was too willful, too independent. I started to believe him. Her voice broke slightly. I thought it was my fault. It was not your fault, Owen said firmly. A man who hurts a woman is a coward, nothing more. Olivia wiped at her eyes. I broke off the engagement 3 months ago. Richard did not take it well. He came to my apartment, tried to force me to reconsider. When I refused, he became enraged. He destroyed my things, threatened me. I was terrified he would kill me. Did you go to the police? His family has connections. The police would not help. So I applied for teaching positions as far from San Francisco as possible. When Independence accepted me, I left without telling anyone except my mother where I was going. Owen felt anger burning in his chest, a protective fury that surprised him with its intensity. That is why your hands shake. Olivia looked down at her trembling hands, still clutching the napkin. I cannot seem to stop them. Every loud noise, every sudden movement, and I am back in that apartment, afraid for my life. I hate being this weak. You are not weak, Owen said with conviction. You left. You saved yourself. That takes more courage than most people have. Their food arrived and they ate in companionable silence for a while. Owen noticed that Olivia's hands were still shaking, but less than before. Talking seemed to have helped. Do you think he would come looking for you? Owen asked. I do not know. His pride was hurt when I left. Men like Richard do not like losing control. Olivia set down her fork. I tell myself I am safe here, that he has no way of knowing where I went, but I jump at every shadow anyway. That is not weakness either. That is survival instinct. Your body is trying to keep you safe. Olivia met his eyes, and Owen saw something shift in her expression. You are very understanding about this. I have seen enough of the world to know that evil comes in many forms. Sometimes it wears a suit and comes from a good family. After dinner, Owen walked Olivia back to the teacherage. The night was clear and cool, with stars brilliant overhead. They stood on her newly repaired porch, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Thank you for listening, Olivia said. I have not told anyone else here about Richard. I was afraid people would judge me or think less of me. Your past is your business, but I am glad you told me. Olivia smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. When will you be back in town? 2 weeks, maybe 3. I hope you will visit when you are. I will, Owen promised. Over the next several months, a routine developed. Owen would come to Independence every few weeks, and he would spend time with Olivia. At first, their meetings were brief and public dinners at the hotel, walks through town, conversations outside the schoolhouse. But gradually, as autumn turned to winter, Olivia began to relax around him. The first time Owen made her laugh, really laugh, was a cold November day. He had been telling her about a particularly stubborn mule that kept stealing his supplies, and the way he described the ongoing battle between man and beast was apparently hilarious. Olivia's laughter rang out clear and genuine, and Owen felt his chest tighten with an emotion he had not felt in years. He was falling in love with her. The realization should have scared him. Owen had built his life around solitude and independence. But loving Olivia felt as natural as breathing, and he found himself looking forward to his trips to Independence with an eagerness that had nothing to do with supplies. Olivia's hands still trembled, though, especially when she was tired or stressed, or when something reminded her of Richard. Owen made it a point to move slowly around her, to announce his presence before approaching, to give her space and control in every interaction. And slowly, incrementally, she began to trust him. One December evening, they were sitting in Olivia's small parlor, a fire crackling in the stove. Owen had brought fresh venison from his latest hunt, and Olivia had cooked it with vegetables from the general store. They were drinking coffee and talking about nothing important, just enjoying each other's company. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia said suddenly. "Anything. Why have you never married? You are kind, hardworking, good-looking. Surely women have been interested." Owen felt his face warm at the compliment. "I suppose I never found anyone I wanted to build a life with, and the life I have is not suited to most women. Months alone in the mountains, harsh winters, isolation. But you are happy with that life." "I was," Owen said carefully. "Now I am not so sure." Olivia looked at him over her coffee cup, and Owen saw understanding dawn in her eyes. "What changed? You did." The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Olivia set down her cup, and Owen noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "Owen, I care about you very much," she said slowly, "but I need you to understand that I am still healing. The thought of being close to someone, of being vulnerable again, it terrifies me." "I know." "Do you? Because I do not know if I can be what you might want. I do not know if I can be intimate or trusting or any of the things a man would expect from a woman." Owen leaned forward, careful to keep his movements slow and unthreatening. "Olivia, I am not asking anything from you except the privilege of your company. Whatever you can give, however long it takes, that is enough for me. But what if I am always like this? What if I never stop being afraid?" "Then I will be patient, as long as it takes." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "I do not deserve your kindness." "Yes, you do. You deserve all the kindness in the world." That night, as Owen was preparing to leave, Olivia did something unexpected. She reached out and took his hand. Her hand was small in his, and it was trembling, but she held on. "Thank you," she whispered. Owen gently squeezed her hand, marveling at the trust this simple gesture represented. "You are welcome." Winter deepened, and Owen found himself spending more time in independence. He told himself it was because the high country was getting too snowed in, but the truth was he wanted to be near Olivia. He took odd jobs around town to justify staying longer, repairing buildings and chopping wood for residents who could not do it themselves. The townspeople began to talk, of course. A mountain man and the schoolteacher made for interesting gossip. But most of it was kind, the romantic speculation of people who liked to see love blooming in their midst. Sheriff Bradley mentioned that public opinion was firmly in their favor, though he warned Owen to be aware that not everyone approved. "There is always someone who thinks they know better about other people's business," Tom said one evening. "Just wanted you to be prepared." Sure enough, the following week, Owen encountered trouble in the form of Reverend Hollister, a stern man who had appointed himself the town's moral guardian. The Reverend cornered Owen outside the general store with concerns about propriety and reputation. "It is not appropriate for an unmarried man to spend so much time alone with an unmarried woman," Reverend Hollister said stiffly. "Miss Harlow is a teacher. She must be above reproach." Owen kept his temper in check, though his jaw was tight. "I have nothing but respect for Miss Harlow. Our friendship is honorable. Nevertheless, people talk. For her sake, you should consider the appearance of impropriety." Owen was about to respond when Olivia appeared, her face flushed with anger. "Reverend Hollister, I can assure you that Mr. Sawyer has been nothing but a gentleman. And frankly, my personal life is none of your concern." The Reverend sputtered. "Miss Harlow, I am only thinking of your reputation. My reputation is built on how I teach the children of this town, not on who I choose to spend my free time with." Olivia's voice was steady, though Owen could see her hands starting to shake. "Now, if you will excuse us, we have plans." She turned and walked away, and Owen followed, impressed by her courage. They did not speak until they were well out of earshot. "That was well handled," Owen said. Olivia's hands were trembling badly now, the confrontation having cost her more than she let on. I am tired of people trying to control me. Richard controlled every aspect of my life. I will not let anyone do that again." Owen noticed how her hands shook and stopped walking. "Olivia." She looked up at him, tears of frustration in her eyes. "I hate this. I hate that I am still so afraid all the time. I stood up to the reverend, but now I am shaking like a leaf." Without thinking, Owen reached out and gently took both of her hands in his. They were ice cold and trembling violently. "May I?" Olivia nodded, not pulling away. Owen held her hand steady, his own large and warm and completely still. "Breathe," he said softly. "You are safe. I have got you." Olivia closed her eyes and took a shaky breath, then another. Slowly, her trembling eased. When she opened her eyes again, there were tears on her cheeks, but her hands were steadier. "How did you do that?" she whispered. "I did not do anything." "You did." Owen rubbed his thumbs gently across her knuckles. "You just needed something solid to hold on to while you found your balance." They stood there in the middle of the street, hands clasped together, and Owen felt something profound settle between them. This was more than attraction or friendship. This was partnership, trust, the beginning of something that could last a lifetime. "I am falling in love with you," Olivia said suddenly, "and that terrifies me more than anything." Owen's heart soared even as he kept his expression gentle. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because love made me weak before. It made me accept things I should not have accepted, stay when I should have left. I do not trust my own judgment anymore. You left eventually. You found the strength to save yourself." Owen squeezed her hands gently. "And what you had with Richard was not love. Love does not hurt. Love does not control. Love does not make you afraid." "How do you know?" "Because what I feel for you makes me want to protect you, not possess you. It makes me want to see you happy and strong, even if that means you decide you do not want me around. That is what love should be." Olivia started crying in earnest then, and Owen pulled her into a careful embrace, giving her the option to pull away. But she did not. Instead, she wrapped her arms around his waist and pressed her face against his chest, sobbing out months of fear and pain and loneliness. Owen held her steady, one hand rubbing slow circles on her back, and let her cry. People passed by and stared, but he did not care. Olivia needed this release, and he would give her whatever she needed. When her tears finally subsided, Olivia pulled back slightly, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "I am sorry. Never apologize for having feelings." "I got your shirt all wet," Owen smiled. "It will dry. Are you all right?" Olivia nodded and then did something that surprised both of them. She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. It was brief and chaste, but it was intentional, and her hands barely trembled at all. "Thank you for being patient with me," she said. "Always." Christmas came to Independence with snow and celebration. The town held a festival in the square, with music and food and dancing. Owen had never been much for social gatherings, but Olivia asked him to attend with her, and he could not refuse. She looked beautiful that night, wearing a deep green dress that brought out her eyes. Her hair was down for once, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. When Owen saw her, he felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. "You look stunning," he managed to say. Olivia blushed. "Thank you. You clean up rather well yourself." Owen had made an effort, trimming his beard and wearing his best clothes. He still looked like a mountain man, rough around the edges, but Olivia did not seem to mind. They spent the evening together, eating roasted chestnuts and drinking hot cider. When the dancing started, Owen hesitated. "I should warn you I am not much of a dancer," he said. "That is all right, neither am I." Olivia held out her hand. "But I would like to try if you would." Owen took her hand, marveling at how steady it was, and led her to the area where couples were dancing. He placed one hand carefully on her waist, holding her other hand in his, and they began to move to the music. It was clumsy at first, both of them stepping on each other's feet and laughing at their mistakes. But gradually they found a rhythm, and Owen relaxed into the simple pleasure of holding Olivia in his arms. She fit perfectly against him, her head just reaching his shoulder. "This is nice," Olivia murmured. "It is." They danced through several songs, and Owen noticed that Olivia's hands never trembled once. She was relaxed in his arms, trusting him to lead, trusting him not to hurt her. It was a gift more precious than gold. Later that night, Owen walked Olivia home through the snow. The town was quiet, most people having gone to bed, and the world felt peaceful and magical. On her porch, Olivia turned to face him. "I have been thinking about what you said, about love not making you weak. And I think you are right. Being with you makes me feel stronger, not weaker. You make me want to be brave." Owen cupped her face gently with one hand, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "You are already the bravest person I know." Olivia leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. "Owen, I want to try something, but I need you to promise me you will stop if I ask. Always." She opened her eyes and looked at him with determination and fear and hope all mixed together. "I want you to kiss me." Owen's breath caught. "Are you sure?" "No, but I want to try anyway." Owen leaned down slowly, giving her plenty of time to change her mind. When his lips finally met hers, it was gentle and careful, a question more than a demand. Olivia stiffened for just a moment, and Owen started to pull back, but then she relaxed and kissed him back. It was sweet and tentative and perfect. When they finally parted, Olivia was smiling and her hands were completely steady. "That was nice," she said. "It was." "Can we do it again?" Owen laughed and obliged, kissing her again under the starlight and snow. This time Olivia's arms went around his neck, and the kiss deepened slightly, though Owen was careful to let her set the pace. When they finally said goodnight, Owen walked back to his camp feeling like he was floating. He was in love, completely and utterly, and miracle of miracles. Olivia loved him back. The winter passed in a blur of happiness. Owen spent more time in Independence than in his cabin, though he still made trips to the mountains to check his traps and bring in furs. Each time he returned to town, Olivia was waiting for him, and each time her hands trembled a little less. They took things slowly, building trust and intimacy at a pace Olivia was comfortable with. Owen learned her triggers and fears, learned how to soothe her when the memories became too much. And Olivia learned that not all men were like Richard, that strength and gentleness could coexist in the same person. One February evening, they were sitting in Olivia's parlor when she suddenly said, "I want to tell you something." Owen set down his coffee. "I am listening." "I wrote to my mother last month, told her about you, about how happy I am here. She wrote back yesterday." Olivia pulled a letter from her pocket. "She said Richard has been asking about me. He found out I am in California somewhere, and he has been making inquiries." Owen felt ice run through his veins. Does he know about Independence specifically? Mother does not think so. She has not told him anything, but he is looking. Olivia's hands started to tremble. "I thought I was safe here. I thought I had escaped him." Owen moved to sit beside her on the sofa, taking her shaking hands in his. "You are safe. I will not let him hurt you." "You cannot promise that. Richard is dangerous. If he comes here, he will have to go through me," Owen said firmly. "And the entire town, for that matter. People here care about you, Olivia. They will not let some fancy city man come and cause trouble." Olivia looked at their joined hands. "I am scared." "I know, but fear does not mean you are not safe. It just means you have been hurt before." Owen lifted her hands and kissed her knuckles gently. "We will get through this together." Over the next few weeks, Owen made sure someone was always keeping an eye on Olivia. Sheriff Bradley was informed of the situation, and several of the townsmen volunteered to take turns watching the schoolhouse and teacherage. Owen himself stayed in town rather than returning to his cabin, taking a room at the hotel so he could be nearby. Olivia protested the precautions at first, insisting she did not want to be a burden. But Owen gently reminded her that accepting help was not weakness, and eventually she relented. As it turned out, their caution was warranted. On a rainy March morning, a stranger arrived in Independence asking questions about a young woman matching Olivia's description. Sheriff Bradley was immediately notified, and he kept the stranger under surveillance while sending word to Owen. Owen found the man at the saloon, a well-dressed gentleman with cold eyes and an arrogant bearing. This had to be Richard Thornton. Owen approached the bar, positioning himself where Richard would have to notice him. Sure enough, Richard turned and looked him over with barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" Richard asked coldly. "Heard you are looking for someone," Owen said mildly. "That is none of your concern. It is when the person you are looking for does not want to be found." Richard's eyes narrowed. "I do not know what you are talking about." "I think you do." "Olivia Harlow. She is not interested in seeing you, and she is not leaving Independence." Recognition and rage flashed across Richard's face. "So she is here. I knew it. And who are you to speak for her? Someone who cares about her well-being, unlike you." Richard stood, and Owen noticed he was several inches shorter and much slighter in build. But there was a cruel cunning in his eyes that spoke of a different kind of danger. "Olivia is my fiancée," Richard said tightly. "What we have is a private matter. I suggest you stay out of it." "She broke that engagement. You have no claim on her." "I have every claim. I invested time and money in that woman. She owes me." Owen felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. "Women are not investments, and Olivia does not owe you anything." Richard sneered. "What is she to you?" "Some backwoods whore you have been entertaining." Owen's fist connected with Richard's jaw before he had consciously decided to throw the punch. Richard went down hard, blood spraying from his split lip. The saloon went silent. Sheriff Bradley appeared seemingly from nowhere, stepping between Owen and Richard before the situation could escalate further. "That is enough," Tom said firmly. He looked down at Richard. "Mr. Thornton, I suggest you leave Independence immediately." Richard wiped blood from his mouth, his eyes blazing with fury. "This is assault. I demand you arrest this man." "Funny, I did not see anything," Tom replied, "and I am sure none of these other witnesses saw anything either." The other men in the saloon nodded in agreement, and Richard realized he was outmatched. "This is not over," Richard hissed, glaring at Owen. "Olivia belongs to me." "No," said a clear voice from the doorway. "I do not." Everyone turned to see Olivia standing in the entrance, her face pale but determined. Her hands were at her sides, and they were not trembling. "Richard, I am only going to say this once," Olivia continued, walking into the saloon with her head held high. "We are finished. I do not love you. I do not want to see you, and I am not going back to San Francisco. You need to leave me alone." Richard stared at her, and Owen saw genuine shock on his face. This was not the frightened woman Richard remembered, the one he could intimidate and control. "Olivia, be reasonable," Richard said, trying a different tactic. "I forgive you for leaving. We can start fresh." "I do not want your forgiveness. I want you out of my life." "You are making a mistake. What can this town offer you? What can he offer you?" Richard jerked his chin toward Owen. "You will end up poor and miserable, wasting your potential." "I am happier here than I ever was with you," Olivia said firmly. "I have a job I love, friends who respect me, and a man who treats me with kindness. That is worth more than all the money in San Francisco." Richard's face twisted with rage. He took a step toward Olivia, and Owen immediately moved between them, his considerable bulk blocking Richard's path. Do not even think about it, Owen said quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. Richard looked up at Owen's muscled frame and seemed to recalculate his options. You will regret this, Olivia. When your backwoods romance falls apart and you come crawling back, I will not be waiting. Good, Olivia said simply. Sheriff Bradley took Richard by the arm. Time to go. There is a stage leaving for San Francisco tomorrow morning. I suggest you be on it. Richard shook off Tom's hand but walked toward the door. As he passed Olivia, he leaned close and whispered something Owen could not hear. Whatever it was made Olivia flinch, and Owen saw her hands start to shake. After Richard was escorted out, Owen went to Olivia. What did he say to you? Olivia's hands were trembling badly now, all her earlier courage crumbling. He said this is not over, that he will find a way to make me pay for embarrassing him. Owen gently took her hands, holding them steady like he had done so many times before. He is just trying to scare you. Tom will make sure he leaves town. You do not know Richard. He is vindictive. He will not let this go. Then we will deal with it together. Owen rubbed his thumbs across her knuckles. Olivia, look at me. She raised her eyes to his. You stood up to him. You told him no in front of witnesses. That took incredible courage. I do not feel courageous. I feel terrified. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite the fear, and you did that. Owen pulled her into a gentle embrace. I am so proud of you. Olivia clung to him, her trembling gradually subsiding. What if he comes back? He would be a fool to try. And even if he does, he will find a whole town ready to stand against him. You are not alone anymore, Olivia. You have people who care about you and will protect you. That night, Owen stayed with Olivia at the teacherage, sleeping in a chair in the parlor in case Richard tried anything. But the night passed quietly, and in the morning, Sheriff Bradley confirmed that Richard had indeed left on the stage to San Francisco. In the days following Richard's departure, Olivia seemed different, lighter somehow. The constant tension she had carried began to ease, and her hands trembled less and less. It was as if confronting Richard had broken some invisible hold he had over her. 2 weeks later, on a beautiful spring morning, Owen and Olivia were walking along the creek outside town. The wildflowers were blooming, and the air smelled of pine and fresh water. They had been quiet for a while, just enjoying each other's company, when Olivia suddenly stopped. Owen, I need to tell you something. He turned to face her, concerned by her serious tone. What is it? Olivia took both his hands in hers, and he noticed they were completely steady. The day I arrived in Independence, I was broken. I was so scared of everything, could barely function. My hands shook constantly. I jumped at shadows, and I had convinced myself I would never be normal again. Olivia, please, let me finish. She squeezed his hands. You saw me at my worst, and you did not run. You did not try to fix me or tell me to just get over it. You just held my hand steady until I learned how to trust again. You gave me time and space and patience, and you never asked for anything in return. I love you. That is what love does. I know. And I love you too, more than I ever thought possible. Olivia smiled, and it was radiant. My hands do not shake anymore, Owen, not when I am with you. You have helped me heal in ways I did not think were possible. Owen felt emotion swell in his chest. You healed yourself, Olivia. I just walked beside you. You did more than that. You showed me what real love looks like, what real strength looks like. She paused, seeming nervous suddenly. I know this is unconventional, and I know I am supposed to wait for you to ask, but I do not want to wait anymore. Owen Sawyer, will you marry me? Owen stared at her in shock for a moment, then started laughing with pure joy. He picked Olivia up and spun her around, and her laughter joined his, ringing out across the meadow. When he set her down, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her thoroughly. Yes, he said against her lips. Yes, I will marry you. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the Independence Church. Reverend Hollister performed the service, somewhat grudgingly, but most of the town turned out to celebrate. Olivia wore a simple white dress, and Owen wore his best suit, his hair trimmed and beard neatly groomed. When the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, Owen kissed Olivia in front of everyone, and her hands were steady as she reached up to cradle his face. There was no fear in her eyes, only love and joy and the promise of a future together. They spent their wedding night at Owen's cabin in the mountains, which he had been renovating and expanding over the past few weeks. It was rustic but comfortable, with a large stone fireplace and windows that looked out over the valley. Olivia loved it immediately. "This is beautiful," she said, walking through the rooms. "I can see why you love it here." "Our home now," Owen corrected. "I know it is not what you are used to." Olivia turned and placed a finger on his lips. "It is perfect. As long as I am with you, anywhere is perfect." That night, they consummated their marriage with tenderness and care. Owen was infinitely patient, attuned to every response, making sure Olivia felt safe and cherished. And Olivia, for her part, found that intimacy with someone who truly loved her was nothing like the fear and revulsion she had experienced with Richard. This was beautiful and right and healing in its own way. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Owen's large bed, Olivia's head on his chest and his arms around her. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what? For being patient, for being gentle, for loving me enough to let me heal at my own pace." Owen kissed the top of her head. "You never have to thank me for that. Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done." They settled into married life with surprising ease. Olivia continued teaching during the school year, and Owen adjusted his trapping schedule to spend more time at home with her. During summer breaks, Olivia would accompany Owen on longer trips into the wilderness, learning to love the mountains as much as he did. The first time Olivia killed a deer, she cried, but then she helped Owen dress it and felt proud of her contribution to their survival. She learned to fish and forage, to read weather signs and track animals. And Owen learned to read aloud to her in the evenings, to appreciate poetry and literature, to see the wilderness through her educated eyes. Their first winter together was harsh but wonderful. Snowed in for weeks at a time, they had nothing but each other for company. They talked for hours, made love by firelight, and built a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection. In the spring of 1877, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "I am going to have a baby," she said simply. Owen turned to her, eyes wide. "Truly," she nodded, smiling at his expression. "The doctor in Independence confirmed it yesterday, due in early October." Owen pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed with emotion. "A baby, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. Owen pulled back to look at her face. "Are you scared?" Olivia considered the question honestly. "A little. But not the way I would have been before. I know you will be here supporting me. That makes all the difference." Their son was born on October 7th, healthy and loud and perfect. They named him Daniel, and Owen cried when the midwife placed the tiny bundle in his arms. Olivia watched her husband cradle their son with infinite gentleness, this mountain man with muscles and strength enough to wrestle bears, handling their baby like he was made of glass. "He has your eyes," Owen said, looking between Daniel and Olivia. "And your stubbornness, I suspect," Olivia replied with a tired smile. Motherhood suited Olivia. She took a year off from teaching to focus on Daniel, and Owen was an involved father, changing diapers and walking the floor with a colicky baby without complaint. They were a team in parenting as they were in everything else. When Daniel was 18 months old, Olivia returned to teaching part-time, with Owen taking care of their son when she was at the schoolhouse. The arrangement worked well, and the townspeople loved seeing the big mountain man walking around with a toddler on his shoulders. 3 years after Daniel was born, their daughter arrived. Margaret had Olivia's auburn hair and Owen's strong will, and she wrapped both her parents around her tiny finger from day one. Daniel adored his little sister, and Owen loved watching his children play together. Life was not always easy. There were harsh winters and lean years, childhood illnesses and occasional conflicts with neighbors. But through it all, Owen and Olivia faced challenges together, their bond growing stronger with each passing year. Olivia's hands never trembled anymore, except occasionally during thunderstorms, which reminded her of the night Richard had destroyed her apartment. But even then, Owen would take her hands and hold them steady, reminding her without words that she was safe and loved. They received a letter from San Francisco when Daniel was 5. Olivia's mother wrote that Richard had married another woman, a wealthy heiress, whose family had even more money and connections than his own. The news should have bothered Olivia, but instead she felt only relief and a mild pity for Richard's new wife. "I hope she is stronger than I was," Olivia said, showing Owen the letter. "I hope she leaves before he breaks her." "You were strong enough to leave eventually," Owen reminded her. "You saved yourself, with help," Olivia smiled at him. "I could not have done it without you, you could have, but I am glad you did not have to." As the years passed, Owen and Olivia became fixtures in Independence. They were the couple people pointed to as an example of true love, the mountain man and the schoolteacher who had found each other against all odds. Young couples would ask them for advice, and Owen and Olivia would share what they had learned. That love required patience, trust, communication, and the willingness to hold each other steady through life's storms. When Daniel turned 10, Owen began teaching him to trap and hunt, passing on the skills he had learned over a lifetime in the wilderness. And Olivia taught both children to read and write, fostering in them a love of learning and literature. Margaret wanted to be a teacher like her mother, while Daniel dreamed of being a mountain man like his father. "They are lucky to have both," Owen told Olivia one evening as they watched their children play in the yard. "Your education and my wilderness skills, best of both worlds." "We are the lucky ones," Olivia corrected. "I never imagined I could be this happy when I stepped off that stage 13 years ago." Owen put his arm around her, pulling her close. "Your hands were shaking so badly that day. I was terrified of everything. Of starting over, of being alone, of Richard finding me." Olivia laced her fingers through Owen's, marveling as she always did at how steady they were now. "And then you were there, this gentle giant who saw past my fear to the person I could become. You were always that person. You just needed time to remember." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains that had become their home. Olivia thought about the journey that had brought her here, all the pain and fear that had preceded the joy. She would not change any of it because every struggle had led her to Owen, to this life, to this family. "I love you," she said simply. Owen kissed her temple. "I love you too, always." As darkness fell and they called the children inside, Olivia reflected on how far she had come. From the broken woman who could barely hold a cup without her hands shaking to the confident wife and mother she was now. Owen had been right all those years ago. She had healed herself. But he had held her hand steady while she learned to trust again, and that had made all the difference. Their life together continued in happy contentment. Daniel grew into a strong young man who combined his father's wilderness expertise with his mother's education, eventually becoming a guide for wealthy tourists wanting to explore the Sierra Nevada. Margaret became a teacher, taking over Olivia's position when she finally retired at age 50. Owen and Olivia grew old together in their mountain cabin, surrounded by children and eventually grandchildren. Owen's hair turned silver and his body grew slower, but he remained strong and capable well into his 60s. Olivia's auburn hair faded to white, and laugh lines creased her face, but her hands never trembled, not once in all the years of their marriage. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration in independence. The whole town turned out, and there were speeches and toasts and stories about the mountain man and the schoolteacher who had fallen in love. That night, back in their cabin, Owen and Olivia sat on their porch watching the stars. 30 years, Olivia mused. It feels like both forever and no time at all. Best 30 years of my life, Owen said, taking her hand. Olivia looked at their joined hands, his large and weathered, hers smaller but equally marked by time and work. Do you remember the first time you held my hands? I was about to faint in the street. I remember. You flinched like I had struck you. I was so afraid of everything. Afraid of men, afraid of being touched, afraid of my own shadow. You are not afraid anymore. No, Olivia agreed. I am not. You taught me that fear does not have to be permanent, that trust can be rebuilt, that love can heal even the deepest wounds. Owen brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You taught me that opening your heart is worth the risk. I thought I was happy alone in the mountains, but I was just existing. You taught me how to truly live. They sat together under the stars, holding hands like they had done countless times over the years. And Olivia's hands were steady as the love they had built together, as steady as the mountains surrounding them, as steady as the heartbeat of the man beside her who had shown her that trust was possible. That love was real, and that happy endings were not just fairy tales, but something you could build with patience, kindness, and the willingness to hold someone steady until they learned to stand strong on their own. Owen Sawyer died peacefully in his sleep at age 72, with Olivia beside him as she had been for 35 years. His last words to her were, "I love you," and her hands did not shake as she held his for the final time. Olivia lived another 5 years after Owen's passing, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She never remarried, telling anyone who asked that she had already had the great love of her life. She spent her final years writing down her story, wanting her descendants to know how a mountain man had saved a frightened woman, not with grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but simply by holding her hand steady until she learned to trust again. When Olivia passed away at 79, she was buried next to Owen on a hillside overlooking the valley they had both loved. Her hands, folded peacefully across her chest, were still and steady in death as they had been in life, a testament to the healing power of patient love. The people of Independence never forgot them. The story of the mountain man and the schoolteacher became part of local legend, told to children and grandchildren as an example of what real love looked like. Their cabin became a landmark, preserved by their descendants, and young couples would hike up to visit it, hoping to capture some of the magic that Owen and Olivia had found there. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blew through the pines just right, people swore they could hear laughter echoing from the cabin, the sound of two souls who had found each other in the wilderness and built something beautiful that would outlast them both. Their legacy lived on in their children and grandchildren, in the students Olivia had taught, in the people Owen had helped over the years. But most of all, it lived on in the simple truth they had proven. That broken things could be mended, that fear could be overcome, that trust could be rebuilt, and that love, real love, the kind that held you steady when you were falling apart, was the most powerful force in the world. Daniel and Margaret made sure their parents' story was never forgotten, writing it down and sharing it with their own children. And those children shared it with theirs, passing down through generations the tale of how a mountain man saw a woman's hands tremble from fear always, and how he held them steady until she learned trust again, and how that simple act of kindness and patience had blossomed into a love story for the ages. The end.